Network appliances designed to defend against DOS attacks typically sit very close to the source traffic. So they'll sit out in front of the web application itself, and then as we saw in that earlier image from Carrero, they'll often sit in front of even devices like the firewall. Now that's a great start, but we still need these application layer defenses, because it can be quite difficult to detect an attack at that layer 4. So for example, what if there's no anomalous TCP traffic? It's a web application that supports HTTP, which runs on top of TCP. There's no SYN floods happening, all the TCP handshakes are being completed. It's just that there's a very large amount of HTTP traffic going over the high-level protocol, and that traffic may be malicious. So you can't always reliably detect it at that network level. This is where we get appliances that might sit behind layer 4 type devices, yet in front of the web application itself. So for example, a WAF, a web application firewall, which is designed to inspect HTTP traffic. Now WAFs will defend against all sorts of different attacks. For example, they'll commonly look for SQL injection attacks, because they normally adhere to patterns that aren't too difficult to identify. But they can also protect against denial of service attacks. Again, if there is a pattern to look for. For example, why does this one IP address keep trying to log in with different accounts? That's a class of layer 7 traffic which probably should be blocked. But one thing that is really important when you're running at that level, and something like a login is a perfect example, is you've got to make sure that they can still inspect HTTPS traffic. If the traffic was encrypted all the way through that web application firewall, then it wouldn't be able to inspect it. So now you're having to terminate traffic before the WAF so that you can inspect the clear text traffic at that device. Because what you don't want is someone simply mounting a DDoS attack over HTTPS. One really practical thing you can do with web applications well in advance of an attack is minimizing the attack surface area. So what do I mean by this? Really good example is take anything off the public net that doesn't absolutely have to be there. So for example, is there an admin facility on the public internet? Is there a reporting facility which you possibly could put within a private subnet? The attack surface is simply exposed resources that attackers could target. The less attack surface there is, the smaller the number of resources they can actually attack. So this is a good practice thing to do well in advance of an attack. Another thing to think about with applications is how you can design it from the outset to be resilient to DDoS attacks. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. The idea of sandboxing application features is to take parts of the application and distribute them in ways that they can act independently of the other one. I'll give you an example. Imagine within our application we have login, the ability to shop, a search feature, and a report section. 4 different areas of the website. Of course, websites tend to be more complex than this, but these are 4 common features which we could segment and run as separate units. So for example, we could put them on different application servers. A process such as logging in, which has to create a hash, can put a lot of load on the environment. If that particular process is delegated to its own environment, and a DDoS attack at the application level is specifically targeting the login process, and that one login server now starts to grind to a halt, at least existing users can still browse around the site, shop, search, report, do all the other things they'd normally do. The only ability that you've lost, as important as it is, but it is just one part of the broader application, is the ability to log in. An attack against that doesn't take everything else down. So you might put that off on a separate web server. Reporting is another good example. Reporting often hits an underlying database. By segmenting that feature out and putting it on its own database server, if a DOS attack was being mounted against the report feature in order to try and bring the database to a halt, it's better to just lose reporting than to lose the whole site. And it's not always about losing it either. It might simply be that the DOS attack is making the rest of the site extremely slow. And whether that be a malicious DDoS attack or an unintentional attack, segmenting infrastructure in this way is often a very good performance objective as well. Now, not only does this distribute the load of an attack more, but it gives you the ability to simply turn off a feature if you have to. Do you simply sacrifice the search feature? A DOS attack is hammering the search page. Do you simply turn it off, stand up a message saying search is presently unavailable, and then either wait for the attack to pass or implement more robust facilities, the types of which we've just looked at in this module? However you do it, the point is simply that you have a degree of control over the way the application is structured that will give you more options if you're worried about a denial of service attack. There are many different ways of doing this. Different servers, different DNS entries, different ways of doing your load balancing. But conceptually, it's the same paradigm. Sandboxing features such that if they're attacked, they don't bring everything else down with it. So that's defenses at the app level. Let's move on and look at an example of what is becoming a very popular DDoS defense service, and that's Cloudflare.